you get to Nashville, like, get where you get off. I was like, you know, so Highway 96, drove like to Franklin, and stuff to get there.
Wow.
And then when we got on, like, when we finished rafting, I was like, let's go. Back before it was, you know, I didn't want to get back. That would have been a Saturday.
Yeah.
Night or whatever.
Right.
So we're all in the bands. We're counting who's there. We're missing Crystal. She was in the bathroom putting her makeup. We had to wait on her makeup.
Oh, my goodness.
You heard her say before that Mike has never seen her without makeup.
I think I have heard this.
It's hard to imagine.
It is.
We learn a lot about.
So. The challenge may have been too intense.
Yeah.
Parents.
Yeah, I do that every week. I'm like, oh, but there'll be probably 20 people that'll come next week. But, yeah.
Well, all of us have kids to drop off, so that usually does take minutes.
We should figure out a way we can do that online, you know, before you get here, like in the car.
Yeah, we have that ability, do we not?
Probably do.
Years
I
ago.
guess you just have to print.
Yeah, I guess you may have to get tags.
I bet when you pick him up there,
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure everybody else.
Yeah. Hey. Getting worried that we've run everybody off. Oh.
They're not. No, he said they were going to visit Scotland. Yeah. At least before they make the decision.
Where is she from?
Jellicoe, Tennessee. She grew up as a family. I don't think they say this wrong. Maybe like when she was 16, they moved back. Spent most of her childhood days.
So, bet that's a culture shock coming back. Especially a place like that. I always like how people go back to the same chairs. Yeah. But it's kind of like this chapter, it's a habit. Go back to what's familiar. It's one less decision you have to make today.
Stay away.
I'm not sure the Browers have many habits.
True. That's
Yeah. Every time I drive by Charleston Square, I just remember how many kids live
it
there.
Yeah.
I think the people that aren't Campbell Street, they're starting to get a little nervous that like this cost is coming in.
Yeah.
We're definitely older, most of
Yeah.
Might not have helped that we were walking down and the Rices were kind of pointing at that house. I'm like,
Oh, no.
they're 80s. We should take that.
You start looking through their window.
We know they're leaving.
Like, what happened? Quiet neighborhood. Yeah. And you never, I always look, because you never know what you're going to see. I drove by one, and you know, the brick entrances, he was standing up on the top, just standing up. There's somebody else at the bottom, but I'm like,
We're doing a trust fall.
yeah, no, he was like this guardian of the neighborhood.
That's you.
It's funny.
Just
The way Steph talks, like she doesn't really know where her kids are.
That's, yeah.
Which life kind of used to be that way. Or stuff wrong. Daniel might go home this week. Caleb's, I think Micah's not far behind. But yeah, it's breathing episodes this week. Tammy went down, Matthew and Jasmine, just about 4 hours back in the hospital. Jasmine finally. But Tammy went down Wednesday, back today, just to help out. Yeah. I imagine we'll be down there on weekend, for a day trip. Yeah, we found a couple of good places.
Yeah.
They're pretty much local too.
Yeah. This.
Birthplace of Elf. Yeah. Graceland was kind of disappointing. Andrea, do you have a book? No, that's the chicken place. You haven't been there for breakfast. I guess you could get them.
Biscuits.
What is it called? Yeah, we went there for dinner. Yeah, I think that a couple places. What's the name of their civic center? Hayden, Spain.
Yeah.
I was pretty upset about how Georgia played until I saw the score. I'm sorry. Georgia was playing Austin Peay. They had a 2-hour lightning delay. I don't get it. They ran the same play, I About 12 times. What are we doing? They never throw the ball downfield. They just throw it out. Let the guy run. Hey.
This is my first.
I always know whose book is based off of how liberal is written, one versus the other. Abby's the writer.
She said she had. That's
Grandbabies.
Yeah. She went down. Happy and Jasmine are pretty wore out. Elijah had to step back. Friday, it's been out to work full time. So it's drive back an hour. Yeah, so they're pretty wore out. So, about a little bit. But Daniel may go home Tuesday.
Real name, Dan?
Daniel. Happy, best I can tell, we've not done a lot. Very much like this family history or ancestry. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for being here. I want to start this class and probably every class like we did last week with reciting Deuteronomy chapter 6. So if you have your Bible or app on your phone, turn to Deuteronomy chapter 6. If you just want to look out of the workbook, it's on page 20. But this is an ancient prayer that God's people have recited twice a day for thousands of years. And it marks a really important, this is Moses speaking, and it marks a really important time in their history because they're about to leave the wilderness and go into the promised land. And Moses seems like he's very concerned about their spiritual lives when they move into this promised land, and especially about passing on the faith to the next generation. And if you remember, Joshua led that group into the promised land. But do you remember in the book of Judges what happened when Joshua, his generation died? Another generation group who did not know. Everybody did what they thought was right in their own eyes, and it was chaos. It was probably the darkest period of their history. And so this generation failed to share the faith with the next generation. All right, so put that together. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. I'm reading New International Version, but either way. Okay. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands, and bind them on your forehead. Write them on the door frames of your house, and on your houses, and on your gates. And as we've talked about so far in this class, one of the things that we're trying to do, and with the book, and if you don't have a book or a workbook, that extra's back there, but one of the things that we're trying to do through this book is not add more things to do. You already have more things than you can do. I'm not trying to add to your to-do list. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty about anything. I think all we're trying to do is learn how to be more strategic and intentional with the times that we already have. And in this passage, you see these rhythms about impressing these on your children and talking about them when you sit at home, dinner time maybe, when you walk along the road, when you're traveling in your car, when you lie down, bedtime, and when you get up in the morning. And so that's what we're talking about this morning, is the morning routine. And I want to start with the book and then go to the workbook. And in the book, let's go to chapter 1. Hopefully you've read and underlined some things, but if not, we're going to read a few of these things together. But chapter 1 is about waking and taking advantage of that time to be more intentional about your spiritual life and the spiritual life of your children. So in that chapter, look on page, I brought my glasses today. On page 32. 31 and 32. So you have this story. The author tells this story about his son and monsters in his room. Any of you had any of those kind of things where, like, your child wakes you up in the middle of the night, they're screaming, they're scared, and there's something about monsters in their room or under the bed or in the closet? Anybody have a story like that? And what you do, or does that happen very often? Does it happen at all? And the thing about that is, and maybe you can remember sometimes when you were a child, like that's their reality, in that moment. That's their reality. And you're trying to help them see a different reality. And a reality where monsters don't exist, or a reality where you're there for them, and they don't have to be afraid.
I remember vividly, like when I was little, at my, growing up, I could see the shadow. So the curtains would make this old man, the shadow. And so in my mind, he was this bad old man. And then I just had to make him a nice man. He became a nice man. So that's what I was trying to tell my kids. I'm like, your head, really, he's a nice monster. So the monster's still there, but now he's nice. He's a good monster now. So that creepy old man became this nice old man that watched me sleep.
That's not great.
That's how I live my life.
But again, a lot of what we're doing is we're taking these stories that we live into, that our children sometimes live into, that are they're not really true, or they're an alternate reality, and we're trying to remind ourselves and remind them of the reality of who God is. That He is the creator of all things, that He loves us, that He wants what's best for us, He's in control. Those kinds of things are what we're trying to that the real reality is who God is and who Jesus is, and why we are here for that. So if I looked at that kind of goes to, this kind of middle of the page 32. There's like a 2-sentence paragraph, I guess you would say, We must tell and retell the stories of reality to ourselves and our children, lest we continue to live out bad dreams. Anybody kind of connect with that? Like what we're trying to, in our homes, we're telling a story. We're telling a story to our children, and hopefully we're telling the story that is true, the story that is reality. And then, I guess maybe the second paragraph of page 33, speaking of his son Coulter, who saw the monster. Coulter had woken up to an alternate version of reality. It was not real, but it caused real fear. He needed a parent to hold him, calm him, and speak the true story of reality over him. Anybody kind of connect with that? Kind of see that it's more than just, getting them to go to bed or, getting them to calm down, although it's important. It's really about telling them a story that they can live into, the reality of this true story. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When does the brain, here's my thing. I have a 3-year-old, and it seems like I'm repeating the same thing. It's almost like she has amnesia. I'm like, we just went over this yesterday. Actually, we went over it at least 20 times. Why am I repeating myself over and over? Y'all feel that way with your toddlers? Yeah, this is, do not go outside unless you tell me. An hour later, she's outside without telling me. We just had that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough.
Children. Yeah, and if you don't know Stephanie's story, it's a little different because this past year they just brought in a 3-year-old into their family, and so they had kind of already, like, this 3-year-old is coming into a situation where a lot of these habits have already been formed, and so you're kind of like get on board, kid. Yeah.
You should know the ropes around here.
But I did this, and I see so many parents like trying to reason with a young child is kind of a waste of your time, isn't it? I'm not sure it ever works. I mean, I don't think they're capable of that kind of reasoning. And so what you're trying to do is just maybe reassure them that it's going to be okay and paint for them a story that is more real than whatever it is that they're fearing, I guess.
I love this sentence. Rationality by itself has never calmed a single fear in children or parents. But it's entirely possible to know that one thing is true. Still.
Yeah.
When school.
Yeah.
Whistle.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And as adults, I think we can say, I know this doesn't make sense, but I feel X, and they can't do that. They can't say, this doesn't make sense. They
We can say,
Yeah. And when we're trying to reason with them, they're just as frustrated with us as we are with them. Yeah. And yeah, it really doesn't work very well. On the middle, I guess second paragraph of page 33, under the waking up to reality section, as parents, we must begin an examination of the habits of the household by looking at our own habits, because after all, our habits and we become our habits and our kids become us. Do you believe that? That's a powerful statement. We become our habits and our habits become us. This is very similar to this sermon series about our thoughts. You know, like our thoughts really shape who we become. Our habits shape who we become. And our kids are going to become more like us than we can imagine. If any of you had that, like I grew up saying, I'm never going to be like my dad. But I found myself as a dad saying many of the same things he said to me, you know, or acting in some of the same way. We're much more like our parents than we think, and our kids are going to be much more like us than we think. And part of the way that we can be intentional about this is through our habits. Questions about or thoughts about that?
I think it's interesting. Our kids act like our partners. That's funny to me.
You said interesting?
Interesting.
Like Shepherd would be like re-adopted and biological kids, and so like a couple of our kids who I birthed, like a lot of them would be like, "Oh, he looks like Ryan." Shepherd's the one that would not say, but Shepherd had on a football helmet and football pads and was standing out on the football field. And when I looked at him, I thought that looks just like Ryan Highsmith. Because I'd seen a picture of Ryan in football pads and a helmet when he was in high school, like far off, and I was like, he's standing the exact same.
Yeah.
Biology.
And have you ever watched Dalton walk? He walks
Just
just like his dad, just like his grandfather.
Absolutely.
It's the same person.
Yeah. Yeah. People tell me I very much have the same mannerisms as my dad, and people tell Matthew that he very much has the same mannerisms. I'm not necessarily that aware of that, but it's true. So when we think about these habits, and we think about morning habits, like we talked a little bit before about your morning routines. You know, one of the things that I think he's communicating here is we're not talking about get up 2 hours early. You know, we're not talking about that kind of routine. Some of you may do that, 2 hours before your kids, but the reality is probably most of you are not getting enough sleep as it is. And so what he's just saying is to be more intentional about how you wake up, not necessarily when you wake up. That's the last sentence from page 33 to 34. I'm much more interested in how we wake, which is fundamentally a spiritual matter rather than exactly when we wake, which is a matter that changes with age and stage. So he says, let's consider for a moment of waking. And he talks about waking up to these stories. In the middle of that paragraph, or the middle of page 34, when, the paragraph that starts with when the first thing I do in the morning is roll over, grab my phone, and begin scanning work email, I wake to the monster. The story of reality is about what I can get accomplished today, and whether I can justify my experience. When I begin the morning in social media, I wake up to monsters of comparison and envy. The story of reality is about the pictures of other people's lives and whether I can measure up. When I begin the morning in the news headlines, the monsters of fear and anger nearly jump through the screen. The story of reality is about how the world is falling apart and how mad I should be at the other to get it. Talk about, when I wake to recurring thoughts of today's get everybody out the door, I wake to the monster of busyness. The story of reality is how there's always too much to do, never enough time. Do you agree with those things? Kind of see how that's related? And how if we could just change one thing, if we could just change how we wake up, necessarily when you wake up, but how you wake up, and the mindset that you wake up with, that can go a long way to your whole day. Have you ever had days like that where it starts off bad and it's bad the whole day? But if you you can maybe have the same experiences, but if you started off different, then even these same things might happen that normally would have you upset, but you can deal with them better. Anybody had that kind of experience? It does make a difference on how you start the day. So the last paragraph for the next section on page 35, before the waking up to the light of the story of God. So we must wake up to how we wake up. We must see that the first role of parent is not to get everyone up on time, but to root our household habits in waking in the truth of the gospel. For in the story of God, simply to wake our heart, but to awaken our heart to God. That's pretty good. What do you think about that? You don't think about that in the morning, do you? When you wake up, your alarm goes off. Not many of us are thinking about, awaken to the reality of who God is. God's love. What's kind of your mindset in the morning when you wake up? Depends on what time you went to bed, maybe. What?
Depends on what happened through the night.
Okay. How many times you had to get up through the night? Yeah.
There's a comedian that says his first thought when he wakes up is, how can I get back here?
Yeah, back to bed.
Yeah.
How many more hours
And then-
until I get here?
Yeah. And one day you'll be old like me and you wake up and you're like, what day is it? What do I do? But yeah, there's so much to do. You wake up in the morning, especially if your kids are waking up before you, but starting the day, you can still be intentional about waking up to the light of the story of God. The rest of that chapter, this chapter, you see, before we get to the 3 habits, you see anything that really stands out? I'll read a couple more sentences and then let me hear from you. Page 36, middle of the page, 2-sentence paragraph. If the light of morning is what wakes us up to the day, then the light of Christ must be what wakes us up to reality. It is in the light of Christ that pulls back the curtains of his heart. So he talked about how, he'd get up and his wife would be the one who would get up and pull back the curtain and let the light in. And what he's saying is that's kind of what our morning needs to be. We're pulling back the light. We're letting in the light of Christ's love into our house by our thing. Some more of the last 2 sentences before 3 habits to let the light in, page 37. What is true in the house, true in our spiritual life. We must find ways in the morning to pull back the curtains of our tired hearts and let the light in. Precisely what spiritual disciplines are. And when we think of spiritual disciplines, I think sometimes we think about the ones that are really difficult, like fasting or Sabbath. But there's actually a spiritual discipline to just waking up with an intentional mindset. Thoughts about that section? Anything that you noticed or starred or underlined? Let me read a couple of more sentences on page 37, and then let's talk about these 3 habits. Under 3 habits to let the light in. The best way to understand the spiritual disciplines is morning routine. Is to understand the spiritual disciplines as morning routines of the household is to imagine them as ways to let the light in. While you might think of spiritual disciplines as something extra to do, I would encourage you to think of them as something you're already doing, though you might not know it. Right now, you have a routine. So right now, you have a morning discipline. You have a morning routine. You probably go about, on most days, pretty much the same kind of thing, and sometimes in the same order. But, so that you already have that routine, and so we're just talking about being more intentional with those routines, such as letting the light of God's love in your house, beginning your day that way. All right, what did you think about the 3 habits? Habit 1, try a short kneeling prayer at your bedside on waking. Anybody try that? Anybody tried something similar? Yeah, no. Yeah. Yeah.
I tried it, so I get up really early to go to the gym before anybody else goes. And we have these like old shutters that shut our blinds. So I'm trying to kneel and I'm hitting. And Adam wakes up. He's like, "What are you doing?" I didn't find it natural. I said, "I'm praying. Go back to bed." Like my tail feathers hit the shutter and the whole window shaking.
It doesn't have to be graceful to be good.
It just looked like it did on the picture.
This is way more than you. I think it's kind of funny. So I have sleep apnea. I have a sleep apnea, and our bed is really tall. and for some reason, I bought an extension of the hose, and I bought a 6-foot extension. so I'm like a fireman every night. And so when I slid out of bed, like got all tangled up, and I carried Amy's thing. She actually sleeps good. I was like, I don't want to wake her up, but it felt really weird. There was also something really about kneeling. There was something really special about kneeling, and that being the first thing that it kind of changed the day for me. And we're not talking about an hour-long prayer. Like he gives examples of like a couple of sentences. Just pray about the things you're already thinking about. Pray about that to-do list. Pray about, what you hope for your, the hopes and dreams you have for your children on that day or whatever. Habit of waking. Try a short kneeling prayer at your bedside upon waking. Like, we can do that. We can even do that if your kids are already up, right? If your kids are up before you can still do that. We talked about, including them, or at least letting them see that. I don't think we ought to do things like scripture reading and prayer just to be seen by our kids. That's probably not the right motivation. But I promise you, they see that and they remember that, and they will say that they will tell stories about seeing you reading scripture, or they will tell stories about seeing you pray. That would be a memory for them. What else do you think about that? Steph, to your point on page 39, no matter how it unfolds, the moment is always as short as it is significant. Yeah. So, small things in the right place have enormous consequences. So it is with prayer. The last paragraph, 39. Power of prayer is not proportionate to its length, for prayer works outside the physics of our intentions. And that it's a good thing, no matter how short. Prayer is the lever that can lift the heaviest of hearts, lift them up to see reality as it really is, that we are children of the King, that today he is redeeming all things, that we are invited into glorious reality. Wake up to the reality that I am loved, that you are loved by God, that you are chosen by God, that children are a gift from God. You wake up to that reality, it changes how you see the day. It necessarily change the day, the chaos of the day, but it'll change how you see the day, probably how you react. Yeah. I really don't want to know. Yeah, and that's the second habit. Make a habit of looking to the scriptures before you look at your smartphone. Like for me, I kind of need a plan. I've been hit and miss a lot here lately, but I kind of need a plan, like a devotional book. I'm there's 31 Proverbs, one a day, month, something like that. I kind of need a plan or a verse of the day. But again, it's how you start the day with the kneeling in prayer, a verse or a passage before you start looking at whatever you choose to look at. Like I know I'm a baby boomer, and we give. I don't even know what the youngest generation is now that has phones, but like we give them a lot of grief. But I think our generation maybe worse. I'm like I can't go anywhere. I don't know why, because I do remember life without them.
I think one thing we try to do, and it's not pretty, but when he was saying it's scripture and prayer, and I think those are important. We love music in our family, so we tried to find. I tried to find a song that was going to be like a song that just kind of repeated itself, and so every time in the morning that song is what's playing, so that hopefully that's what sticks in their head.
Yeah. They'll remember that. That'll be kind of like a family anthem.
Yeah, so we try to play.
What's your song?
Our song is The Goodness of God, but sometimes there's a new one God taught me that they like. It's Nash in the car. Yeah. The other day I was in the car.
Better than the ACD.
Nash got in the car. He said, sis, I don't want to listen to this. I want to listen to Let the Dogs Out. And usually they're arguing about what song. So it's not pretty at all. But, it's like trying to be
But you're making an impression. And songs are like, I have songs playing in my head almost the whole day. Right? And it's usually the last song that I listen to. And it just, so if you have those things kind of repeating, I said this, again, this is so much fitting with the sermon series. When we're talking about capturing our thoughts, I told somebody the other day, I said, other than scripture and prayer, I think worship music has helped me more than anything capture my thoughts and to get my mind, framed right in what's really real.
But had enough. It was also been better. That's a big thing that changes the music. Yeah,
Toby Mac.
So you
Man,
did.
Yeah.
Really did.
Yeah.
I listen to trash. I can tell if I'm not. It does change my mindset. And I don't.
we have like a phrase where we're like, oh, we need some Jesus music in here.
Yeah.
And like, I have seen like, Brody will like, occasionally just get on his phone and turn on, he's like, I'm gonna get my speaker and turn on some Jesus music for all of us. And it's like, that's the vibe right now. Is we
Lindsay's really into music, and even if it's not kind of like what you're talking about, like that pump up music that is trash, even the music that she's listening to isn't the Jesus music. It's not great. I mean, and when you hear those words come out of their mouths, even though it's just not, it's just like, that's bad. And then I'm thinking, what are you doing to their minds?
All right, as we wrap up the third habit of waking that he offers, practice a short moment of gathering and sending the family. So you've kind of done that in the car. You know, he talked about in the video, like I think he has 3 boys. Like they get together, form a little circle, hold hands, and you know, you basically you're the coach sending the team out or taking the team out of the locker room onto the field, and you're just kind of setting the mind for that. So let's do this for homework. So this is about habits of waking. Let's go to chapter 10. Read chapter 10 about habits of bedtime, and we'll discuss. We'll finish the study guide and do chapter 10 next week. Does that sound good? Thank y'all so much for being here. Keep coming, even if you're behind. Keep coming to class. Catch up if you can. We'll build some time in for that.